Alien girl, VO, trembling whisper. They said no one would hear me down here. But humans have a way of hearing what they shouldn't. A dim blue glow flickers across the wet stone. A hand, trembling, covered in dirt and blood. Rain slid through the cracks in the ceiling and fell in thin silver lines, cutting through the dim light of the lower tunnels. Kieran Holt adjusted the strap of his tool pack and cursed under his breath as another drop hit the back of his neck. Fantastic. The city leaks, and so do I. He was supposed to finish his midnight inspection and file a quiet report. Instead, the scanner on his wrist kept flashing red, unregistered life sign. At first, he thought it was a rat, maybe a maintenance drone gone rogue. Then the sound came again, a breath, a whisper. He crouched by a rusted grate, shining his light into the darkness below. The beam reached a pool of filthy water, rippling around a half-submerged shape. For a heartbeat, he didn't move. Then the shape turned its head, eyes, silver and alive, stared back at him. "Hey," he said, voice low, unsure whether to be gentle or shocked. You're not supposed to be down there." The girl blinked slowly. Her voice was raw. "Then help me not be." Something in the way she said it, simple, exhausted, hit him harder than any order ever had. He'd seen bodies buried under worse things than water. He'd promised himself never again. "Hold on," he muttered, prying at the bolts with his lever. The grate screamed in protest. Metal bent. Rain hissed on hot circuits. He tied a safety line, tested it, and started down. The air inside the shaft was colder than he expected, thick with rot and steam. His boots splashed into the murky water beside her. Up close, she looked even less like a myth and more like a survivor, skin marked by restraints, a faint shimmer tracing her veins. "Easy," he said, wrapping his jacket around her shoulders. "You're freezing." Her gaze flicked to his uniform patch. "You work for them?" "Used to," he replied. "Tonight I work for bad decisions." A tiny smile ghosted across her cracked lips. He pulled her close, clipped the harness around them both, and began to climb. The rope strained. The city groaned above them. When they finally reached the edge, she whispered, "Why did you come?" Kieran glanced at the darkness below, then back at her. "Because someone had to answer." The rain followed them home. Kieran's apartment sat on the rim of the lower ring, a cramped slice of concrete and flickering amber light wedged between air ducts. It smelled like solder and old coffee, his kind of peace. He kicked the door shut and lowered the girl onto the couch. She was lighter than she looked, bones trembling under the blanket he threw around her. Steam curled from his jacket as he stripped off the soaked layer and tossed it over a chair. "Name?" he asked, kneeling to check the wound on her ankle. "Lyra," she whispered, as if the name might betray her. He nodded once. "I'm Kieran. You already know I make terrible choices." A weak laugh escaped her before she bit back a hiss of pain. "Why help me, terrible choice man?" He searched for antiseptic and found only cleaning alcohol. "Because I'm tired of watching people disappear," he said. "And because I hate paperwork." The smell of alcohol hit the air. Lyra flinched but didn't pull away. Up close, her skin shimmered faintly beneath the grime, violet veins that pulsed like faint circuitry. He wondered if she was bioluminescent or just broken. She caught him staring. "Never seen an off-worlder?" "Only on recruitment posters," he said. "You all look taller there." That earned him a real smile, small but alive. Outside, thunder rolled. He glanced at the monitors on his wall, motion sensors blinking red. "They'll come looking," he murmured. "Council doesn't like loose ends." Lyra's fingers tightened on the blanket. "Then why aren't you afraid?" "I am," he admitted, "but fear's just another job hazard." She studied him for a long moment, the silver in her eyes softening. "You're different," he shrugged, adjusting the bandage around her ribs. "Mostly defective." A low chime broke the quiet. The security grid had detected an unauthorized ping. Kieran turned to his console. Lines of code scrolled fast, tracing the access route that dumped her into the shaft. The signature froze his breath. His supervisor's ID. Lyra read the look on his face. "You know who did this?" He closed the console, voice rough. "Yeah, and tomorrow they'll know I know." By morning the city had changed. The usual hum of pipes and transport rails carried something sharper, An echo of alarm. Every screen on the corridor walls flashed the same phrase in bright red. Security alert, containment breach. Kieran pulled his hood low and handed Lyra a maintenance uniform he'd scavenged from his locker. "You'll blend in," he said. She looked down at the oversized sleeves. "Blend into what exactly?" "Poor life choices," he replied. She almost laughed, but the sound caught in her throat. Her body was still weak, though her spirit seemed less fragile now. Together, they slipped into the flood of workers heading toward the lower transit line. Beneath their feet, the platforms vibrated. Surveillance drones swept overhead, red optics scanning for movement. Kieran kept his hand near the compact tool case that hid a short-range jammer. "Stay close. If they scan your vitals, we're done." Lyra glanced at him sideways. "You talk like you've done this before." He didn't answer. He was already listening to the static in his earpiece, to the rhythm of a system tightening its grip. When the first checkpoint appeared, he guided her down a maintenance chute. They landed in a dim passage, lit by the pulse of leaking coolant lines. Steam rose around them like ghosts. "Where are we?" she whispered. "Off the grid," he said. "Mostly." She leaned against the wall, catching her breath. "You could still walk away." "I could," he said, pulling out the data chip from his pocket. "But you're carrying proof of something big. They didn't just throw you away. They buried evidence with you." She blinked. "Evidence of what?" He hesitated, then met her eyes. "Genetic cleansing. Project Echo. The Council's been wiping out anyone with hybrid DNA. For a heartbeat, the air seemed to still." "You mean—" "Yeah," he said quietly. "You were never a prisoner. You were a warning." Before she could respond, a metallic thud echoed down the tunnel. Boots. Kieran grabbed her hand. "Move!" They ran. Drones screeched through the corridor, red lights slicing through steam. Behind them, a voice called out over the speakers, calm and cold. "Engineer Kieran Holt, stand down. You are harboring a contaminant." He didn't stop. "They can call you whatever they want," he said, breathless. "You're not the disease here." Wind howled through the shattered roof of the communications tower as Kieran forced the service hatch open. Lightning turned the whole sky white for a heartbeat, painting the city below in fractured silver. Lyra stumbled in after him, soaked, shaking but determined. "You said this place was off-grid," she gasped. "It was," he said, catching his breath. "Until we arrived." Rain hammered the metal decking. Somewhere far below, sirens climbed toward them, a swarm of engines echoing up the hollow tower. Kieran dropped his pack, ripped open a panel, and pulled a cable into a portable console. "Can you send the data from here?" She asked. "Maybe," he muttered, typing fast. "If I overclock the uplink, we'll have a 10-second window before the Council fries it." 10 seconds, she said softly. "You humans love impossible math." A voice cut through the storm behind them. "And you love getting people killed." Kieran turned. Mara stood at the doorway, uniform soaked, weapon steady. Her expression was a mix of duty and regret. "Kieran," she said, "walk away. Hand over the alien. I'll make sure they keep you alive." He laughed once, dry and tired. "Alive isn't the same as free." Lyra stepped forward despite the gun aimed at her. "You serve a council that erases its own children." "Silence," Mara snapped. But her voice cracked on the word. The lightning flashed again, and for a split second Kieran saw fear behind her eyes, not of them, but of herself. The neural implant at her temple blinked red, glitching with every thunderclap. "Something's wrong with you," he said quietly. She swallowed. "They're in my head, Kieran. Don't let them in yours." He turned back to the console. Too late. The system beeped. Upload ready. Lyra's trembling fingers hovered over the command. "Key, this will shut down half the city," she warned. "Then let's give it a reason to—" "Reboot," he said. She pressed the key. The tower erupted in blue light. Screens across Nerath Prime flashed open, streaming forbidden footage, names, faces, proof. The storm became a roar of truth. Mara dropped her gun and screamed as her implant shorted out. Kieran pulled Lyra down behind a barrier just as the top of the tower exploded into rain and fire. Then silence. When Kieran opened his eyes, the world smelled of smoke and wet iron. The sky above the ruins glowed pale orange. Dawn breaking through the haze for the first time in years. He coughed, sat up slowly, and found Lyra beside him, half buried under fallen cables. Her pulse fluttered weakly against his fingers, but it was there, steady, alive. "Hey," he said hoarsely. "You still planning to die dramatically, or can we reschedule?" Her eyelids lifted. Her voice was a rasp, but carried a smile. "Depends. Does the city still exist?" He looked over the ledge. From their perch, he could see Nerath Prime stretching out like a broken circuit board, half dark, half flickering with new light. Screens across the tiers still played fragments of the broadcast. Faces, names, confessions. People gathered in clusters, not running this time, but talking, shouting, pointing. Change had a sound, and it was loud. "It exists," he said. Maybe for the first time. Hours passed before rescue crews reached the tower. They pulled them from the wreckage, wrapped them in foil blankets, asked too many questions. Kieran ignored most of them until one medic asked who the girl was. "She's the reason we're all breathing clean air today," he said simply. Weeks later, the hospital still smelled of antiseptic and rain. Kieran sat by the window with a cast on his arm, sipping bitter coffee. The door slid open, and Lyra stepped in, wearing plain clothes and a half-smile. "You're vertical," she said. "Miracle of engineering," he smirked. "You should see the bill." She set a small metal bird on the table, its wings cut from scraps of tower plating. When he tapped it, it fluttered once and let out a soft electronic chirp. "For luck," she said. "Or irony," he replied. "Depends how long it survives." They stood together at the window. Outside, the city lights flickered in uncertain rhythm, trying to remember how to shine on their own. Lyra touched the glass, tracing the reflection of both their faces. "You know," she said quietly, "you could disappear now. No one would blame you." He looked at her, then out at the rebuilt skyline. "I'm done disappearing," she smiled. "Good. Then we start over." Kieran nodded once. Together. Beyond the window, Nerath Prime woke to a different kind of dawn. Fade in. The city hums again, not the hollow hum of machines, but the uneven pulse of life, finding its rhythm. Children's laughter drifts through cracked streets. A drone lies rusting in a gutter, its red eye blinking weakly before fading out. On a rooftop far above, Kieran stands beside Lyra. The wind tugs at their jackets, carrying the smell of rain and metal. The world below is scarred but alive. Kieran VO. They built this place to last forever. Funny thing about forever. It always ends when people start asking questions. Cut 2. Citizens removing the council's banners, painting over the insignias with bright colors. A little boy runs past holding a paper kite. It catches the new sunlight. Kieran VO. Truth doesn't rise because it's brave. It rises because silence gets too heavy to carry. Lyra turns toward him, her silver eyes reflecting the sky. He smiles faintly, slipping the metal bird into her hand. Kieran VO. Maybe we didn't save the world. Maybe we just reminded it how to listen. Fade out. The bird's wings flutter once, catching a beam of light.